In this video, we're going to work on one of the interface practice problems. We're going to do problem number 3. It says create a class named asset that meets the following specifications. The class should have a field called ID number. Okay, so public class asset. It's going to have a field called ID number. Remember that these fields should be either marked private or protected. And this class basically is, if you look down in the instructions later, it says we're going to make a child class from the asset class. So what that means is that we should mark it as protected. Just things will be a little easier if we do that. So protected, and then we need a type for this. So ID number, that could be an int or a string if you allowed letters or other characters inside the ID number. So I'm just going to go with string. The problem doesn't say, so any reasonable choice is fine. So there is the field. Next up, it says the class should have a constructor that sets the value of each of its fields. Okay, so public asset, and there's just one field, and it should set that. So this ID number equals ID number. Okay, so far so good on that one. It says the class should have a toString method that returns a string showing the value of each of its fields. The toString method should not call any other method. So I'm going to mark the toString method with the @override tag because we are overriding it. And we just return a string out. I'm going to use string.format. And in case we want to format this later. And percent %s for string. And the format of this, it doesn't matter too much. You just need to return a string out of here that shows what the ID number is. All right, and so that's that part. It says the toString method should not call any other method. We have not done that. It says the class should have get and set methods for each of its field. The get and set method should not call any other method. So we should have public string get ID number. And a set method, public void set ID number. And set the value of the field to whatever this parameter is. Okay, so far so good. Neither of these call any other methods. So that's satisfied. Next up, the class should have an abstract method named description with return type string. Okay, so that is going to be of the form public abstract string description. And remember, abstract method should have a semicolon at the end, no method body. That is going, since we have now added an abstract method, right, when we go to compile this, we're going to get an error, right? It says asset is not abstract and does not override the abstract method. So we have an abstract method. That means we have to declare this class as abstract. So basically, it's going to serve as a template for creating child classes. All right. So that's done. It says the class should contain no other fields, constructors, or methods other than those listed here. Done. Shouldn't implement any interface. Done. The class should not extend any other class. Done. So all of that is satisfied. Next up, it says create an interface named measurable that meets the following specifications. Okay, so let's create another file, public interface measurable. Okay, and here it says the interface should contain a constant named pi of type double. Okay, so double pi. And we need to set that equal to some value, so I guess we'll just go with that. Here, we haven't marked any modifiers, but remember it's public static final by default here in an interface. So there's no point in adding it in there. All right, next up it says the interface contains an abstract method named getMeasure with return type double. Again, we do not have to put any of the modifiers here afterwards or before on the method header because it's assumed, right, to be public by default. So we don't have to add anything there. And so that's it for the interface. The interface should not contain any additional methods besides those listed here. So it doesn't, so we are done. Next up, create a class named bank account that meets the following specifications. So public class bank accounts. All right, it says the class is a child class of the asset class. So if I compile this is fine. But we want it to be a child class of the asset class. So we do extends there, and now when we compile that, we're going to get an issue, right? Actually, a couple issues. All right, so number one is bank account is not abstract. It does not override the abstract method description in assets. So, right, if I look back at asset, it has this abstract method description. We have to implement that in bank account. So we have to go here and put a method public string description. And whatever goes here, right? It's a bank account. Let's see. Oops. Extra parenthesis in there that I don't need. Okay, so you see that it took care of that first issue here, which was the bank account is not abstract and does not override the abstract method description. We've done that, right? But now we get this error that says constructor asset and class asset cannot be applied to the given types, right? This bank account class is a child class of asset, right? And asset has a constructor, and the only constructor it has parameters. So we will need to supply that to the parent class constructor. So that means back in bank account, we have to have a constructor in here, public bank account, and the it has to have at least that parameter for ID number. And we have to make a call to the parent class constructor, right, and pass the ID number in. That way, when you create a bank account object, right, it will create the parent class object asset first, and that will get set up, and then the bank account class can get set up. All right, so that'll take care of the error. Okay, and then it says the class should implement the measurable interface. So up here in the class header, we need to put implements measurable. And that's, again, going to cause another error. Right? We're going to get bank account is not abstract and does not override the abstract method get measure in here. Okay. All right, so I need to add or implement this method. So that's going to be public double get measure. And then I'm going to have to return something out of here. The most likely thing that you would probably want to return maybe is the balance of the bank account, right? But it's not set up yet. So for right now, just to make it compile, I'll just return 0 out of here, and that should fix the error that we had there. Okay, so that implements the measurable interface, and that's satisfied. All right, let's go back and look at the next thing. All right, it says the class has a field named balance of type double, so that probably would have been better to move up here in the directions and do that first. So I'm going to have a field called balance. And now it just kind of makes more sense. Instead of returning 0, 0.0, we can just return balance out of there, out of that get measure thing there. Okay, and let's see what's next. Oops, back over here, we've got it says the class should have a constructor that sets the value of each of its fields. So going back to bank account, we already had the constructor here, and so it was setting the ID number field, which it inherited from the parent class. But we also need to set the balance as well. So I'm going to add a parameter to the constructor that we already did, and for balance, and then for balance, it's a field in the child class here, the bank account class. It is not a field in the asset class, so there's no need to pass balance to the parent, right? All we would need to do is to set balance, set the balance field the way we normally set fields in here. Okay. All right, let's see what next. All right, so the class should have a constructor that sets each of its fields. Done. It says the class should have a toString method that returns a string showing the value of each of the fields. The toString method should not call any other method other than methods in the parent class. So I'm going to add a toString here. So use the @override tag. Since I'm overriding the parent toString. And what I'm going to do here is just use the parent class toString and then add information about the balance here. All right, and so the balance is going to be a double, right? So let's do comma, point to F for the formatting on that. And then the parent toString I'm going to put in this spot right here for this format specifier. So the parent toString is super.toString. And balance goes in the other one. There. So you can just put all of the fields in here. You don't have to do it this way, but This just happens this way is just kind of convenient because you don't have to redo the part that you already did back in the parent toString, right? This ID number part. So you don't have to redo that, number one. And then number two, if you change the parent class, then toString, then this will automatically update as well. So we did call another method here, but that's okay according to the instructions, right? It says you can call methods in the parent class, right? And that's what we did by putting the super.toString. So super always refers to the parent class, and we're calling the toString method there. So that's okay. It says the class has get and set methods for each of its fields. The get and set method should not call any other method. So this class, right, bank account has two fields, one balance and the other is in asset, which is ID number, right? So the parent class asset already has the get and set methods for ID number, and so there's no reason here to change any of that. So we don't have to actually add that in here. The only one we have to put in here are the ones for balance and the ones for set balance. Sorry. There's no need to add the other ones, right? In fact, you kind of don't want to do that, especially if you're not changing anything. And that way, if you do decide you're going to change the get and set methods and you want all the child classes to inherit that, then you only have to change it once in the parent. Whereas if you put a different version in each of the child classes, then you're going to have to change it everywhere you copied it to. So it's better just to leave it in an asset and not rewrite it here. Okay, and I think that is everything we need in this class. All right, so down here it does say the implementation of the get measure class should return the value of the field balance, which is what we did. Okay, so here they told us to return balance out of there, which was kind of, or actually that was up here, get measure. If you do look, the get balance and the get measure thing are exactly the same. They don't have to be. It's just that's what it told us to do for the get measure class. So it is a little redundant, but we're just following the instructions here. All right, next up, a circle class. So make a new class. So public class circle. It says the class is a child class of the asset class. So extends asset. All right, we're going to get those same two issues, right? Circle is not abstract and does not override the abstract method description. Okay, so right, circle is a child class of the abstract class. Asset has this abstract method called description. What we've got to do is either provide an implementation of that method or declare this class as abstract. So public string description. And we just need to return a string out of here. It doesn't need to be anything fancy. All right, that takes care of the previous error that we had, but now we're going to get that constructor asset and class asset cannot be applied to the given types. So again, the issue here is that the parent class asset, right, only has constructors with parameters right here. So we have to, the child class has to provide that information to the parent class, right? So that forces this class to have a constructor. So we'll go ahead and put it in there. and we're going to need an ID number, because what needs to happen is in the very first line of the constructor, we need to pass that ID number to the parent, so the parent can get set up, so then the child can get set up. Okay, so we've fixed that error. All right. So that's done. It says the class should implement the measurable interface. So in the class header, implements measurable. We know that that's going to give us an error when we compile, because we haven't implemented the abstract method in there. So get measure. And so we're going to have to return a double out of here, because that's what get measure in the measurable class returns. Okay. And for right now, we don't have any details, so we're going to return 0.0 out of here. But some obvious things, it might be the radius, it might be the diameter, it might be the circumference, it might be the area. So we'll just keep working the problem. We'll maybe have to revisit this. Okay, it says the class has a field named radius. So again, that probably should go first. So private double radius. And then what we would want is for the constructor to set up that radius value, which it's not doing that currently. So we'll just add radius in there into the parameter list. And remember, this radius is a field in the child class. It's not in the parent class, so there's no need to pass it to the parent. We just set it up like a regular field here. This dot radius equals radius. Okay, so the class should have a constructor that sets the value of each of its fields. That's done. Should have a toString, right, that returns the value of each of the fields. The toString method should not call any other method other than the methods in the parent class. So I'm gonna add a toString in here at override public string toString, and I'm gonna return pretty much the same thing I did there before, right? I'm gonna put a placeholder for a string, and then I'm gonna put radius, and then I'm going to put the radius rounded to 2 decimal places. And in this first placeholder, I want the parent class toString, and then for the radius, just the value of the radius there. All right, next up. It says the class has get and set methods for each of its fields. So again, this has circle has 2 fields. It has this field radius, right, of its own, and then it also inherits the ID number field from its parent class asset. Asset also has get and set methods for ID number, so we do not, and probably should not, right, include those unless we want to modify them, but we don't want to here. So all we need are the get and set methods for radius. So let's add those in. So public double get radius, return radius, public void set radius, and that should be double radius. All right, so there's the set methods for radius. So all fields now have get and set methods. It says the implementation of get measure should return the area of the circle. Okay, so up here, get measure is going to return the area of the circle. Had they not given us any details about that, then we could just return 0.0, right? If no implementation details are supplied, then any reasonable choice is fine. But here they specifically request the area, so I'm going to use that constant pi that I had in the measurable interface here, and then times radius, just to take the easy way out. So that's the formula for the area of a circle, right? Pi times the radius squared. All right, and that's it on that one. Next up, another class called numbers, right? So public class numbers. It should be a child class of asset, implement the measurable interface, and have a field which is an array of integers. So that's going to be extends asset, implements measurable. And we have a field that's an array of ints. I'm just going to call it numbers. When I go to compile that, we're going to get those same issues that we were running into before, right? In other words, we haven't overridden or provided an implementation for the abstract method description that's in the asset class. So let's do that. So public string description, and just return a string out of there. Any reasonable string is fine. It's a list of numbers. So that will take care of that problem. The next error that we get is it doesn't override the abstract method get measure, right? In the measurable interface, there is a get measure an abstract get measure class. So we need to implement that, right? So it's going to be public double get measure, and then I'm going to have to return something out of there. So for right now, we'll just return 0.0, and if they don't give us any more information, we'll just leave it like that. But you can get more creative if you want. That fixes that issue, right? But then we have the other issue about the constructor, right? Constructor asset and class asset cannot be applied to the given types. So we need a constructor in here, so public numbers. And we're going to need two things, right? We are going to need a parameter for the field that's in the parent class, which is ID number. So string ID number. We're going to need a parameter for this. So int numbers. Okay, and then for the fields that are in the parent class, right, ID number, we're going to have to call the parent class constructor and pass those along like we did before. And for the other one, right, we'll set it up like we normally set up fields before we talked about inheritance. Okay, so that takes care of that. The constructor sets the value of each of its fields. We need a toString method. So similar before, mark it with the @override tag. Public string toString. And then we need to return a string out of there that displays all of the fields. So once again, I'm going to leave a spot for the parent toString right here. And then put some text number that will show that this is the numbers field, and then another string right here. And I forgot string.format here. Let's see, and we'll need a in the first spot, right, in the first placeholder for the string, we'll put a call to the parent toString. And then for the second one, that's a little bit trickier, right? If I just put numbers here, like so, that's really not going to work. It's not really going to display the numbers that are in the array. You're going to get the standard toString that's inherited from the object class. So it'll just say something like integer or int, and then a memory address, which is not really what we want. There's a number of ways to print out arrays, but for right now, we'll just do the easiest way, and then inherit just up at the top, import java.util.arrays, and then here do arrays.toString numbers. That's just a quick and easy way to print out the array. It doesn't give us any real details about how that should be done. It doesn't say one per line. This method is going to print the array on one line. So if it asked us to print the array elements one per line, we couldn't do it this way. But the problem really doesn't give us any details about how we're supposed to do it. So we just go with what we've got. Any reasonable way is okay. All right, it says the class has get and set methods for each of its fields. The get and set method should not call any other numbers. Remember, it already has the get and set methods for the ID number field. It inherits those, right? So there's no reason to add those in there. So public int get numbers. So return numbers. Then public void set numbers with parameter int numbers, and this dot numbers equals numbers. There. All right, so that works. And it says the implementation of the get measure should return the average of the numbers in the array field. Okay, so that's going to take a little bit of work here. So what we would do is set up a variable called total to keep track of the sum, and then have a for loop for int I equals 0, I less than. Or actually, we could use the enhanced for loop if we like, for int number in numbers total equals total plus number. All right, and then return total divided by numbers dot length. That should be numbers dot length. So this is just that common array task that we talked about in the first class. Add up a bunch of numbers in an array. And then, to get the average, we would divide by the length of the array, how many numbers you have in there. Okay. There is an issue here, right? In the sense that if if the length of the array is 0, then that's going to crash, right? Which is not good. So we could do something like, say, up here, say if numbers dot length equals 0, and we could return something out of there, say 0 if we wanted to. That might not be the best thing to do, but it doesn't supply any details here. That's just going to avoid this from stop this from crashing. So, and it's numbers dot length here. Okay, so next up, let's see what we've got. All right, so that completes that one. So next up, it says create a class named test measurable. So we're going to do that. Public static void main string args. It says the class should create exactly one array containing 2 anonymous bank account objects, 2 anonymous circle objects, and 2 anonymous numbers objects. Okay, so I'm going to have to make a single array that will hold a bank account circle and numbers. Remember that in order to do that, I'm going to have to either use the interface type measurable or the common ancestor class asset, right? Since bank account circle and numbers are all child classes of asset, we could make the array of type asset, but also these 3 classes implement the measurable interface, so we can also have the interface as the type of the array. So since it's test measurable, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with the name of the array here. All right, and I'm just going to call it items. So I'm creating my array, and it says it wants the things in the array to be anonymous objects. In other words, not stored in a variable with a name. So we can just create those right in line right here. So for a bank account, I have to supply a string number, an ID number, and a balance. And so just do 2 of those. And 2 circle objects. With a radius. So an ID number and a radius. And for 2 numbers objects. So the first parameter is a string for ID number, and then an array, which you could do in line like this, I believe. We'll see in a second here. All right. It looks like I forgot parenthesis here and a parenthesis here. Right here, I forgot a lot more than that. New numbers. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I need to close this off right here. This is not closed. Alright, cannot find symbol. Oh, I forgot a C right here. Okay, so there we go. So here, when they say anonymous, right, I am just creating those. I'm not storing those in an extra variable or anything like that. Okay, so that's what it means by anonymous. And then the other kind of tricky thing is that the parameter for numbers, right, the second parameter is an array, right, of ints. There is a way to make an anonymous array like that using the curly brace notation. So you would put the new keyword and then int, open bracket, close bracket, and then list the elements that you want in the within curly braces right here. So you can see it again right here. Okay. All right. So that creates all 6 of those items that I want. It says the class should contain exactly one for loop that prints the objects in the array, 1 per line. All right, so let's do that. So for measurable item in items, I want to print those things out. System.out.println item, and I want to do it 1 per line. Okay, so you can see that looks pretty good. All right, what else do they want us to do? It says inside the for loop, call the description method in each object. Okay, so I'm going to do system.out.println item.description. Okay, and so here you can see I get an error. It says error cannot find symbol description. So, right, but you can look in each one of these classes, right, and in numbers, there's the description method, right, in circle, there's the description method, in bank account, there's the description method, right? So the issue is, okay, well, what's up with that? It's there. Why can't you see it, Java? And the reason why you can't see it is because what we did, right, was store these objects in an array of type measurable, right? And if you look over in measurable, Java's looking over here and it says, I can't find the description class, okay? That's because the description class is in asset over here. So the fact that we stored those, right, objects in the measurable array means that Java's now confused about the fact that it can't find, it doesn't see that these are guaranteed to have that description method because it's over here in asset. So the fix for that is to typecast this thing. So if I try to do typecast, right, and change the type of this item temporarily to asset type, if I just try to do it the normal way here, when I click that, you're going to get another error message and says cannot find symbol like that. So what you need to do here is to put this in parentheses, this whole thing, or just this in parentheses here. Let's see, like so. And you can see that fixes it, right? So this tells Java, hey, don't think of this as a measurable, right, object because we stored it in this measurable array. Think of it as an asset, which we can do, right? Because all 3 of these, bank account, circle, and numbers, they're all child classes of an asset. So they are assets. And so then once you tell Java to think of it that way, then Java says, oh, I see. And because of this abstract method in here, they are guaranteed to have that description method. And so it calls it. If we had gone the other way and put these all in an array of assets, if we wanted to call any of the methods that are in the interface, we would have had to do the same thing. Okay. All right, so let's test that out, make sure everything's good. And you can see it's calling the description on each of those, which is great. And last item in the list, oops, I went too far. It says inside the for loop, call the get measure method in each object. So this one should be easy. System.out.println item.get measure, right? The get measure method is in the measurable interface, and we store these objects in the measurable interface. So we will not have to tell Java, where to find that get measure method. And you can see it prints it out. Okay. There is one issue I noticed here, and I forgot about over here in numbers, right? It's, I think, chopping off the decimal because those are ints. So you've got to be careful about that. One way you could do that is to cast this to double before you do division. And let's see, we should get some different answers for the average now. Okay, so it was chopping off the decimals before. All right, so that's it on this one.